All right. What you're seeing here is the skyline of San Francisco from Alamo Square, looking through the painted ladies on a beautiful night, mid-November, cold, chilly. Alice and I, we headed into San Francisco to see the incredibly talented and creative Leif Vollebekk, who you hear in the background. And it was a beautiful night. Parking was hell, but we ended up over there by Alamo Square and found this spot. And we're so moved by the vision, the vision of the world, the lights at night, the way we are now as humans. It's in part, it's how a part of the world rolls, cities and energy and artists and people going out on a Saturday night. And we enjoyed ourselves a great deal. And man, Leif, wow, you are so beautiful, soulful, creative. And it was inspiration to see your talent and the expression, solo. For people who don't know Leif, at least in this version of solo artist, gets on stage, plays some kind of organ, plays some piano, different guitars, sings, gets a little background, a little snapping, a little clapping. And oh my God, his relationship to the audience was beautiful in so many ways and so inviting. And he would riff at times. And there was this moment where he started to play the song right here, Hot Tears, which is my favorite song of his so far. I've loved it for a while. And this woman started singing Bonnie Raitt's, If You Don't Love Me. I don't know if that's the title of it, but he's like talking back to her. He's like, you think that's the song I'm about to play? And it was this moment where I'm like, okay, has this woman had one too many? And what's going on here? And he was so beautiful with it because he started playing the song and singing it to her. And the audience started singing it. And then he went for a while and just juicy creativity. And then he paused and he said, the background of this song is really interesting. And he knew the background of the song, and which was that there was a domestic violence incident, and no one got hurt, fortunately. But the judge asked him if he learned anything. The man who had engaged in the domestic violence, and he had asked if he learned anything. He says, you can't make somebody love you if they don't. And apparently, he or the person who read the article wrote this song, and Bonnie recorded it in one take. And it was such a beautiful moment for me because I felt the tension of, here's an artist doing his thing, and the audience was starting to get a little boisterous, or one person. And his resiliency and his creativity in the face of that he was not threatened. He was such in his heart in a beautiful way. And I thought, and I've been thinking about this conversation around masculinity, which to me has gotten brighter and clearer since the election. Before we went out, I actually watched my first UFC fight, and my daughter was watching it with her boyfriend, and that was fascinating to me because it was the whole other thing. I don't know. I think maybe it was like UFC 308 or something like this, and it was after watching the Tyson and the Jake Paul fight, which was, everybody knows, not actually that interesting in a performance. Symbolically, it was interesting. Anticipation-wise, it was interesting. So suddenly, like this fight culture, the fighting culture, which I would say is an expression of alpha masculinity, which we talked about a couple weeks ago in relationship to the election, that there is a gap here. And so now a gap, I would say, on the left, a gap in the Democratic Party of how to welcome and integrate this instinctual force of male power, right? And there's reasons for that. I'm not going to get into those right now, but I think that was what the referendum was about. Like, enough of America said, we can't let go of this instinctual thing that's important to us. And I've looked at this for a long time in different ways, from men's work to evolution. And I think it's worth continuing to talk about because I don't think we're clear. And as I watch this unfold, I still think we might even be less clear. I think the impulse was there, but the ability to embody this is still seems confused to me. So, there's a need to celebrate warrior energy because it's not going away. We're not going to get it out of the body. It's been here too long, and it's involved in too much of the survival story of humans and the broader biological conversation of survival. How does that work, right? And so there is a warrior strategy. It's not the only strategy, but here it is on display because in the crowd was Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr. and I don't know who else was in that little posse there, but that was their little posse. And so there it was, right? Right by the fight, right by the tournament male. Remember, there's the tournament male strategy of mating, or tournament. Yeah, I think it's called tournament male strategy or tournament strategy, where it's fighting for mating success, fighting for the opportunity for mating. And there's cooperative mating strategies, which are often called pair bonding. So humans, as you know, are caught in the middle. Humans are a mix, has a menu of options according to David Buss, right? There's a menu. And when I studied with Robert Sapolsky looked at his work, he would say there's more of a two choices and we're caught in the middle, which was more conflicted. But David Buss, in his perspective, is like, yeah, it's not so not so much a polarity, but more of a range, a spectrum. And I think, the interesting thing about having the masculinity on display, the interesting thing about having the fight and this energy kind of show up, this alpha masculinity being in front of me, at least, because I paid attention, and I am paying attention, is I think that there's more confusion about it. I don't think it's actually really clear. And I'll tell you what I mean by that confusion. Because what I've noticed is that, okay, so there's this vote, there's this desire to have a strong man there, right? And then I saw on the news this week this congressman from Texas who basically said, "Oh, whatever Trump says, we jump. We give him whatever he needs, whatever it takes." And I was like, that's an interesting phenomenon because it is a turning over and a giving away of one's potency, right? And I think this is the new problem that we're gonna face in this particular version of trying to find a home for a strong masculinity, is the people who think that Trump is the symbol of that, or the leader, or the person who's going to bring that around or bring that about. It's actually not going to be well distributed. It's going to be very hierarchical. It's going to be very, I don't know if it's going to become fully autocratic, but the clear tendency towards a self-absorbed version of that, and the inability that he's shown in the past, we'll see. Probably not going to teach a old dog new tricks here, but it's not going to be manifest in a way where it's going to be distributed, where it's going to be ennobled. And it's going to be more of a pyramid scheme. I would suggest that this is a pyramid scheme of masculinity, that this is about fostering his sense of power. And I had an exchange with, for me, he's beloved, Robert Sapolsky this week, and he noted in the conversation that the humiliation that he sees in Trump's position of having to buy and pay for attention, to have to win it through not authentic means of his actual nature and his being, but playing roles, playing the big man, whether it's the big man in New York, which he wasn't, but playing the big man, playing the big man on TV, playing the big man in politics, that there underneath that, there's a humiliation. And I thought, that's well taken because it explains the revenge, right? It explains the revenge feeling or the I'm going to met out and pay back my hurts, which I've never admitted, but I'm going to pay them back. I'm going to make sure that people feel the pain of not following my game, right? And so when we look at the appointment or what might be the appointment, but the nomination of Matt Gaetz as the deliverer of that, we can see that same kind of humiliation because, reporting suggests that he is very unliked. And if you look at his behavior, it doesn't sound like he likes himself very much either. And so the way to distribute that pain of humiliation is what I'm expecting. And it's interesting because if that's how the version of alpha masculinity is playing out right now as a pyramid scheme that's going to have downsides where other people are got by their balls. Their balls aren't their own anymore, and somebody else is holding on to them. In other words, Troy Nails, we're going to just give this current leader, president-elect, whatever he thinks he wants or is demanded. That's a kind of a fundamental disownership of one's personal power and voice. So I find this freaking deeply, deeply ironic. Deeply ironic that in the attempt to find a positive version of male strength, of an alpha masculinity that lives in the biology, that there is people sacrificing their own. And that maybe if the read is right, and I think it is, the dominant male in the American society is not interested in lifting up other people's, and particularly men, if this is what the goal is, to find a healthier strength in masculinity where it's not put down, right? Where it's not belittled or negated or judged. And so what I find in myself, and I don't know about you, but what I find in my heart is a kind of, oh, well, this makes sense, right? This makes sense. Like if we're going pyramid and we're going hierarchical, the distributive values of feminine wisdom suddenly make more sense. And it's like, well, right, because this is the reaction. And I think probably what many people call it the patriarchal side or the shadow side of masculine leadership is this pyramid hierarchical situation. So I think that we're going to continue to be confused. And I think the actual people who wanted this are going to find themselves confused because I already see the disconnect in the process of going for that integration or that calling back to a positive masculine strength, right? And so my view on that, when I say it out loud, is we're all confused in ways, right? We all can be. I know I can be confused about the internal impulses inside myself, that I can feel a range of things. And I think this is actually important to name, that, it's not uncommon to feel confused about who we are and what we want in life and what our feelings are about and what our society is about and how the deep internal being and the internal forces embedded in us through evolution live and express themselves in our age and in our world that's far removed from the savannah realities or the ancient Europe, woolly mammoth. We gotta hunt this, 15-ton beast as a group of, 25 men and make sure that the 150 of us are alive, through the winter, right? So those visceralities, to feel confused about them and what they look like now. And this gets into what is healthy masculinity, or where is that alpha leadership, that strong masculinity show up. And as I said, there's some confusion or some dynamic that we have of different mating strategies and different social strategies. And so partly it's context, right? So the right masculinity act is only as accurate as it is a reading of the context. Meaning, you know, the holding the infant versus, you know, climbing a tree, as I saw one indigenous South American native man do to get the monkey that he was able to blow dart that stayed up there, right? And just like the 65-year-old man climbs 70 feet into the forest up a tree in order to get the food for survival, right? So I think this is an ongoing conversation, and we should get it out. We should air it out, not as just like it's got to be this way or we're going to judge it, right? It's like, okay, we're in this situation. This is humanity, and if we come with our heart and intention of finding a positive way and we can talk about it, I think that's much better than just seeing it acted out and reacted out, if you get my drift. So I'm thinking about my beloved and belated, my beloved friend, Brent MacKinnon, who recently passed in September. And Brent was amazing. He was 81 when he passed away, and he was a poet, a writer, a linguophile, and he spoke many languages. And he was also a Vietnam vet. And I've read his work. He's spoken to it at points, but he was often interested in the uninitiated American male. And I'm not exactly sure that I can represent initiation, but I will tell this tale, which is a very poor rendering of it, because when he writes about it, and you can find a very, very beautiful description, like one of the most beautiful passages of experience and revelation on Parabola, the magazine Parabola, and it's online. And if you look up Brent MacKinnon, you'll find it. And in it, he describes he got really sick and he was left in a village. And he describes the way he was looked after when he was nearly dying from whatever fever. I don't know if it was dengue fever or what he had. And as he was in his near hallucination of suffering and pain and looking at his own very survival, he felt a humanity coming from people who he had been told were his basic enemy, you know, Vietnamese people, not all, but, you know, whatever that condition was, you know. And he realized the way he had been a warrior up to that point, in that situation, in that context, he can no longer live by. And I feel like calling on Brent right now. I feel like calling on Brent because I think there is a question of initiation and what is strong masculinity, right? And maybe it's not something we can see until we're vulnerable, you know? And maybe it's something that's just not that evident to us. But I think it's a good teaching for us right now. I think it's a very good teaching to consider what warrior forces, particularly in men, need in order to have a vision, a sense of belonging to humanity that is not instinctually reactive or protective or willing to lead through pure violence, lead through power over, lead through hierarchy. So I don't know if this, and I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. But I think this is the conversation we should be tracking. I don't think this current resurgence of alpha male impulse is clear. I think it's partial. I think it's speaking to something, but I think we need each other. We need the wisdom of each other's instincts, because in the array, in the pantheon of inner forces inside us, that's how we'll get there, you know? That's how we'll get there. So I know we're in conflict. I know we are, because it's out there, and one of my hopes is that we can, by talking about human nature, by talking about instinctual forces and evolutionary forces and contextual situations where those are appropriate or where they don't work or where they have value, we can get to a more nuanced conversation. You know, we can be like Leif when it shows up and it's our moment on stage, rather than shutting down the voice that thinks this is the song that needs to come out. We can play with it, and we can get curious, we can explore it, we can invite it. We can show that we have a connection to that energy that person wants, that person has. And in so doing, we can be less conflicted with our own nature. So that's what's on my mind this morning. And I appreciate you if you listened all the way through. Yeah, we're definitely in this together, aren't we? So keep on keeping on. And thank you for dropping in.